Hello and welcome to the Backlot 605, a box office. I am your host, Brian Mensing, and joining me as always is my co-host, Derrick Veurink. How are you doing tonight?
Good. You?
Not too bad. It's been a an interesting weekend for the movies. New movies coming out and other stuff going on, and we'll just leave it at that.
Yep.
Um, it's been a weekend. So yeah, Uh, let's talk movies because we're just gonna go pipe. If anyone just go look at the Oscars. If you haven't, you'll know. Uh,
This is an awards-free zone.
yeah, exactly. This is an awards free zone. If you want awards, go check out our schmuckies from last month or 2 months. How long? Wow, however long it's been. All right. So coming in this week at number one, uh, funny enough, not the Batman. We have the
No.
Lost City coming in at $131 million. Um, I'm pretty sure you've already seen it. I got an opportunity to see it
Yep.
this weekend. My
Yep.
screening was almost sold out.
Okay.
The audience enjoyed it; they loved it. I could definitely
Yep.
tell I was in a group of people that were my age and older. How was the screening for you?
Pretty good. I went to the 9:30 late show on Friday night at the West Mall 7. So,
Hmm.
definitely not a peak time period, but still, it's still opening night, so a lot of people are showing up and
Hmm.
definitely wasn't full or sold out by any means, but for a late show, I was pretty happy with the turnout and it gave me the confidence that hey, this movie's going to do pretty well this weekend because you know it's targeting it's targeting its audience. It knows
Yep.
how to pull them in with its stars and the comedy and all that stuff. And in all honesty, I figured as long as it got to 30 million in some fashion,
Hmm.
that's pretty much a breakout hit for me by my
Oh,
standards. So
I would certainly agree, and I think everything considered and the kind of movie we're talking about here, I'd say 31 million is a very strong opening for this movie. Considering the stars and it's not going to be your multi-billion-dollar franchise like a Marvel movie or something like that. But I think I agree. I mean, in regards to um, the stars that we have and everything like that, I think it crosses demographics in terms of who's going to go see this between the younger crowd that's going to go check it out for Channing Tatum, slightly older crowd going to check it out for Sandra Bullock, and the Brad Pitt stuff going on there too.
yeah, I think I read something that half of the opening weekend audience for this movie was 35 and above,
Hmm.
which kind of makes sense in the realm of, this is targeting a slightly older demographic. I mean, there's still enough for the youngins because, again, it's still got Harry Potter and, the folks that will show up for Channing Tatum's butt, all that stuff.
Hmm.
So,
Yes, we get full on Channing Tatum butt. That was a thing. So,
yes.
I mean, overall, I enjoyed it. I think it's well deserved of its number one spot. I think it's interesting to see that a movie like this is powerful enough to take on to be the number one of this week because as we go into our next one here, we sit here and we're looking at the fact that we've been talking about the Batman for the last couple weeks and whatnot, and to
Yep.
have that be dethroned already, only in its fourth week, I think says a lot for that movie, and kind of what we were kind of expecting for this week for the Batman.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I mean, pre-COVID, I mean, it was usually part and parcel to have a movie unseated from number one every week,
Regularly.
maybe a 2 week run at the most.
Hmm.
And now we're kind of getting to this point in late spring and with these late March and April movies where we're going to see a lot of big stuff now every single weekend going forward. Then, of course, right into the summer. So
Right.
now that studios are no longer scared about, you know, putting movies out, it's going to be a roller coaster ride here for the next several months. And
Oh,
that's
I
why
agree.
Batman gets knocked out, which, again, this movie's made well over 300 million bucks at this point. It's doing fine. So,
The one thing I would also make point though is being that it's I actually I look at this as being only a 44% drop is actually still pretty good for this movie,
Yep.
considering the fact that I mean, at least for us locally here, it lost the large format screen here in Sioux Falls. So I
Yep.
imagine other theaters, in terms of whether it be IMAX or the XD theaters, the large format theaters, losing only 44% percentage, I think going, it's just not getting that extra bump in the ticket sales because of the large format screens.
Yeah, I mean, I know here in Sioux Falls, it lost its large format screen to the Lost City, of course. Because they're
Hmm.
pretty prescient when it comes to giving that to the big movie of the weekend. But again, you know, obviously this is where you get your long pull customers, the ones that aren't going to go out right away, but again, will still show up eventually because hey,
Hmm.
it's a Batman movie. They'll find their way eventually. Wait out the crowds and things like that. So
Exactly. So I say we're doing pretty good, and I imagine it's still going to hold pretty strong up until the point when it hits HBO Max here in a few weeks.
yeah, yeah. I mean, again, I'm not sure how many people are aware of that streaming debut date. Again, it was kind of wild to get that date so far in
So
advance
early.
of the movie even coming out.
Hmm.
But again, with movies like these, we talked about this before. When it comes to the superhero movies, you want to get out there right away because you don't want to get spoiled or like this past week. Online, Warner Brothers released the big 5-minute deleted scene with Batman and the Joker.
Hmm.
So they certainly felt confident, like, okay, enough people have seen this where we don't have to like tippy toe around this anymore. We'll play up the whole, yeah, the Joker's in here for a little bit, and there's much more of him on this deleted scene on YouTube than there was in the movie itself.
Right, right. And I do wonder that. I mean, whether or not people do or do not know about that April 19th date, it's like, would if they would have held back on releasing that, would they have taken a bigger swing at the box office, just simply because if they don't know, they're like, oh well, again, I can wait 3 weeks and I can just watch it at home, or if they would just be like, like a 2 week thing or something, like they'd be like, oh, in 2 weeks, by the way, the Batman's going to be on HBO Max. That at least maybe. I don't know. I agree with you. I think it seems that they pulled too early to say, oh, by the way, it's going to be on HBO Max as soon as they did.
Yeah, I mean, and again, we talked about this before with regards of, well, this is part of Warner Brothers' overall strategy where
True.
every movie will be on HBO Max in 45 days.
People will start getting the hint even if they don't know it.
Exactly. So
Uh, All right, coming in at number three. Oh, yeah,
yeah,
that's right. We were
I
talking about this here. How is the
yeah,
Batman topping? And so far, it's doing pretty much like what we said here. Is it's right where I think it's gonna stall out, in that it's
yeah.
at number three behind The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, just simply because between now and when it hits HBO Max, I can't see it garnering another $100+ million between now and then.
No, I mean, I think probably again the best case scenario I think here is that maybe it tops out right before or at 400, which
Hmm.
again a very strong showing. Again,
Yes.
as we said before, better than any non-Nolan Batman movie ever. That's a lot to be proud of. And again, at this point, it's just a matter of, well, when are they gonna officially announce the release date for the
The
Batman
Batman
2?
too. Yep,
Because that
exactly.
hasn't happened yet for some reason. So
And you and I both know it's like it's just tick tick tick. We know it's coming. You just need to tell us when.
yep, exactly.
Maybe they just stopped moving their other stuff that they've already announced and already started filming. Maybe that's why we haven't gotten it yet.
Yeah, I mean the domino effect of, yeah, we got to push Black Adam down, so that pushes the Flash, and that pushes Aquaman. Blah blah blah. It's
Exactly.
rough.
It is rough. It is rough to be in Warner Brothers.
Yes.
All right, coming in at number three, the RRR, $9.5 million. This is one of those ones where I saw it pull up when I was looking at the movies that were released this week, but it was one of those ones that I didn't know where it was gonna land, just because it's not my kind of movie and whatnot, and I didn't even
Yep.
know what to expect from it.
Yeah. So I'll give the context here. So Triple R, as I think I've heard it colloquially called, this is a movie from India. It's not officially from what we would call Bollywood. This is from the Telugu language sector, which is called Tollywood.
Okay.
This is a movie that's kind of been one of those shelved blockbusters for quite some time due to COVID. Because, from my understanding, they were filming this when the initial COVID lockdown occurred.
Sure.
And it's actually been pushed back several times between last year and this year. Most recently, this was supposed to come out the first weekend of January here. And I think to the point where we actually mentioned it as like a, hey, coming to theaters next weekend is this Indian movie Triple R. Except that when they had the Omicron breakout, they delayed it like within like 5 days of it coming out. So they just been pushing it down the road.
Oh.
So this is where this is coming out now. Um, I believe this might be the record for an Indian language or a movie from India in terms of a American box office opening weekend, from what I've
Hmm.
heard. Um, that said, this thing will be very front loaded. Most of the people that went to see it, I saw it like Thursday night when it opened here in the States or on Friday. It may not even be in the top five next week, which is kind of crazy considering that we've only got one new movie coming. So we'll see how it fares. Again, I usually don't hit these things up to be perfectly honest, but I know a lot, especially in Sioux Falls, there is a very solid uh, group of folks that do attend these movies, which is why we've been getting more and more and more of these showing up on the Cinemark schedules around here. So it definitely is worth it, or for them to do that. And
Yeah.
again, as you'll see here, we've been talking about this with all sorts of things in terms of you know the eclecticness and diversity of movies coming here, like this programming of these movies from India, or we talked in recent weeks about the anime stuff. We're seeing more and more of these non-Hollywood efforts entering the box office because they're finding the ways to poke through and get into that top five by word of mouth and all that stuff.
Well, and I really, I really kind of hope that that starts to be the trend when it comes to foreign films, just because in the same instance that, American films that are made that have a huge box office success, not only domestically, but we look at international numbers on a
Yep.
whole, and it's why is it that us as Hollywood, as the Americanized movie industry and whatnot, why do we have to be the only one that would be like, well, we have our international numbers too? Something can come from all sorts of different places. I mean if we talk like Parasite or this or anything for that matter, good movies come from other countries, and I think we should definitely give those more of a chance and more of an opportunity to make money in the United States and show that what, there are good quality films that come from some place that isn't California basically.
Yeah, and I should also mention, I'll mention two other things. One is that these openings are indeed timed with when these movies open in their home country of India. So
Hmm.
these are like global day and date debuts across the board. The other thing I'll mention is that in America, uh, especially with a movie like this, in Sioux Falls, I know that ticket prices for this movie were $22 a pop. Um,
Wow.
which again, is not entirely surprising because we talked about when we talked about BTS in here a week or two ago.
True.
That also had a big ticket premium price on it as well. Which kind of I think obviously it helps blow it up the box office where they can get
Yeah.
into the top five. But I think they're also kind of, hedging their bets a little bit and, like if it's gonna, it's worth the premium price, to command the audience and get it in this theatrical space that, you know, it needs in order to have these major impacts as well. So
Well, here's hoping we get to a point where we can have good quality foreign films come into the states that people will appreciate and go to at a quote unquote normal price and whatnot. But I mean, just the fact, like I said before, is that there's good quality foreign films that I don't think get the quality of attention they deserve. And that's even coming from me. Like, if there's one thing I can say, even myself personally, there's so many foreign films I'm like, I just never got around to see, or whatever the case is. Or just it. I'm I'm
yeah,
I'm one of those
yeah,
people that I need to be educated myself.
exactly.
All right, coming in at number four, Uncharted, $5 million in its sixth week. or yeah, in its sixth week, only taking a 36% drop. Uh, I look at this as just it's the typical counter programming to what we got. If people are like it's too busy to go see the Lost City, they've got something else that they can see that's kind of in that same realm ish type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've got two things to throw in here this week. First, I'll just mention that they did announce today, as of the day this is coming out, Sony did announce their VOD release date, which is April 26th,
Hmm.
and then on Blu-ray on May 10th. So again, that's more than 2 months of a pure theatrical window for a movie like this, which again is mainly in the realm of what Sony is doing, because again, as we've talked about before, Sony doesn't have their HBO Max or their Paramount Plus to dump this off on. So, they're committed to giving these big theatrical, efforts as part of that. But the other funny thing was, so when I went to see The Lost City on Friday night, this was in the theater adjacent to Uncharted. And I found it very interesting that because of the timing, I was able to kind of see people leaving Uncharted on Friday night.
Hmm.
And quite astonishing. Like, I would say at least half of the crowd that was at the theater for Uncharted were high schoolers, you know, kind of tapping to we love Tom Holland and we're going to see
Hmm.
Tom Holland and, whatever he does, especially if it's, even if it's not Spider-Man, because, he's, you know,
He is a draw right now.
yeah, exactly. And I think that has what kind of has helped, we talked about a little bit in previous weeks, but again, I think it's not worth underestimating, the appeal that Tom Holland has as a star on his own. And that's why I'm kind of curious that because this movie has been such a big hit, I have to wonder, if the studios will make greater efforts to have, other Tom Holland vehicles that aren't just Spider-Man movies or him appearing as
Right.
Spider-Man in some other Marvel Cinematic Universe movie.
Oh yeah, I for sure agree there. I think Sony themselves, being that they have such a long quote unquote, a long working relationship, as long as old as Tom Holland is, Sony is going to do everything they can to crank out as many Tom Hollands I think they can while basically striking while the iron is still hot.
Yep.
They're at some point here, they're going to try to convince. Well, they've already signed him on to three more Spider-Man movies.
Yep.
They're going to try to convince him to do more Uncharted.
Yep.
And the reason why I say try to convince him is he's gone on record and saying how brutal it was going from Uncharted to Spider-Man because of
Yeah.
how labor or how physical both of those roles are. But Sony's gonna I see Sony trying to do everything they can, and that includes that paycheck to say,
Yep.
we know it's a little rough, but here's more money.
Yeah, I mean, obviously making those movies back to back wasn't, the best. And also keep in mind that he's filming both of those movies in the latter half of 2020 during the peak of, you know, COVID, pre-vaccine and stuff like that, which also couldn't have been fun. I definitely don't
Right.
begrudge him that. But obviously he's proving his star battle. He's been in two of the biggest movies ever. Well, Spider-Man, of course, is one of the biggest movies ever, but Uncharted,
Yeah.
of course, is one of the other biggest movies in recent months. So you can't deny his star power in that extent. So,
I know.
oh
I honestly say is that if this would have been just a straight Mark Wahlberg vehicle, I
yeah,
don't think
it
we'd be.
doesn't do this.
I don't think it'd be. I don't think we'd be talking about it anymore. I think it would have been a box office flop for Sony, and I think the smartest thing they did was bring Tom Holland into this franchise.
Yep, you cast young, you can go quite a while. So there's that.
Tom, this is going to be your James Bond. Buckle up, buddy. All right, coming in at number 5, Jujutsu Kaisen Zero, $4.58 million. A movie, to be honest, I wasn't even sure we'd even be talking about this week.
I
Um,
wasn't sure either. I think it's kind of interesting because what happened was Dog took a very huge dive, like about 50%, thanks largely to
mm,
the Lost Cities. Like, okay, people are gonna see the other Channing Tatum movie now, which
right.
hurts the first Channing Tatum movie. And then X fell about 48%, which is, kind of good by horror movie standards, but just enough to get outside of the top 5 as well. So
Hmm.
so I'm kind of impressed as well that Jujutsu Kaisen 0 stuck around for a second week.
Yep.
But again, it just kind of shows that, as we talked about last week, these anime titles, that if they coordinate them well enough, they can make a big impact at the box office. Again, it's not Demon Slayer the movie big, because that movie got to like 46, 47 million
Yep.
ultimately. But this is probably second. This is probably going to file in at second place in the recent anime roster when all is said and done.
Well, I'll even go as far as to say, you know, it's in the top 5 and still took and it, but it still yet took a 75% drop. I mean, that
Yep.
still has something to say for it. It's like, you know, you're absolutely right. I think it's all about the timing. They're like, all right, so if we time this here, you can't tell me. You and I both saw is that like the expectation that Dog dropped off the top 5 because Channing Tatum was battling against Channing Tatum.
Yeah.
It's the same as what ended up with Uncharted and Spider-Man. The only difference was is Spider-Man had the legs to
Yep.
be able to compete during the same time frame, whereas this one you'd be like, I'm sorry, there's serious Channing over here, but funny Channing's over here, and we're gonna go check out funny Channing Tatum. So, you know, I applaud this one for the fact that it's able to take that kind of a drop and still be able to be like, hey, I'm still here, guys.
Yeah, and I'll be curious, because I think it's either going to be Triple R or this that falls out of the top 5 next
Mm-hmm.
week, and I'm not sure which one it's going to be. Which
Right.
again speaks to non-Hollywood programming at the box office and the lasting power that it can have, and also to some extent the fact that the studios didn't really program much this month anyway. But
Right.
there's that too. So
Yeah. It'll be very interesting to see. All right. So, and then looks like here our top 5, we have The Lost City coming at $31 million. The Batman coming in at number 2, 20.5 million. Triple R comes in at number 3 at 9.5. Uncharted comes in at 4 with $5 million. And Jujutsu Kaisen 0 comes in at our number 5 at $4.58 million. So not a bad weekend. And I will say, just because you brought it up, I did a double feature with The Lost City, and I saw The Lost City and X the same night.
yeah,
And people need to go watch X. And I want Pearl like now.
I I you, now that you've seen the movie, I think I can reasonably say I'm surprised that X hasn't been a bigger hit because of that, or
I would
at least a bigger hit
agree.
out of the gate. You know,
I would agree. It is a solid movie. It needs more love. It definitely needs more love because it was creepy. When I was told that it was Boogie Nights meets Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I'm like, that can't be a thing.
but
Oh,
it is.
that is totally a thing. And but the post credit mid credit trailer for Pearl, oh my god, I want that like now. Like they need to get that out like now. I want to know what that is. Because if X is anything to say for it, Pearl is probably going to blow our minds, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll see some good word of mouth on it. I still know there's a bunch of people in our group who haven't gotten around to it, but are very excited to see it as well.
Hmm.
Maybe that helps it out in the next week or two. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad to see you enjoyed it, because yeah, I felt it was definitely a blast last weekend, and glad to see you enjoyed it too.
Yeah. There's stuff that you see coming, but even when it still comes, there's so many cringeworthy moments.
Yep, yep.
Oh, like you know it's gonna happen. Okay. All right. And so next week, the infamous, finally, we're getting the how many times we've been moved around Morbius, Jared Leto's Morbius from Sony, because Sony needs to try to make as many Spider-Man universe movies that they can, because that's all they have for superheroes. Um, you know what? I'm still looking forward to this. I think it looks, I mean, in the same vein of like Venom and everything that else Sony has done and whatnot, but he's got the look. I'll take it. I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going to see it Thursday night. I
Hmm.
mean, I can't say I'm hugely excited for it, because it doesn't necessarily look as like fun as the Venom movies do. But it'll be nice again to get this one off the table, because again, This movie was supposed to come out originally in July of 2020. It's been
Mhm.
delayed for nearly 2 years. So it'll be just kind of nice to get
Just get
this
it
out
out
of the
there.
way and, move on to whatever crazy thing Jared Leto has to do next. That being said, I'm keeping an eye on the ticket sales here in town. And to be
Mhm.
perfectly honest, the Thursday night ticket sales, where you would expect like the comic book fans to come out in droves,
Mhm.
Morbius hasn't really sold many Thursday night tickets, which
Really?
kind of concerns me. I think like in the XD theater for like Thursday at 7, it's only sold like 30 tickets, which blows my mind. But maybe that's a sign that maybe this movie isn't going to do as huge as we would think. So I'd say to keep an eye on that.
You've piqued my curiosity. All right, so I guess we will find out come next week. We'll see whether or not Morbius can beat the Lost City. Oh, that
I'm
would
sure we'll beat it. It's just a matter of it's
by how
probably
much?
not going to be huge. So we'll see.
Well, we'll definitely see. It will not be Spider-Man. We know that.
No.
All right. That has been our top our box office for this week. Be sure to check us out every week as we discuss the box office for what's going on and what's coming up for that next week. If you want to follow us on social media, check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterbox HQ, all at Backlot 605. Facebook, you can also follow us on South Dakota Film Community Group. If you want to listen to the podcast, be sure to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Amazon, and YouTube. If you want to support the show, be sure to check us out over at patreon.com / backlot 605. Where you get more additional content. What else can we be looking forward to there, Derrick?
Yeah, this week on the Backlot calendar, this Wednesday on the main feed, Batman month comes to an end with an episode on Batman Begins,
Mm-hmm.
which has already popped in on my Patreon feed. So it does exist. Yeah, and that brings it into it on the main feed. On the Patreon feed, there is one more episode due for Batman Under the Red Hood, one of the animated DC direct-to-video movies. So there's that. And then, of course, this Thursday on the website, I'll publish this week's Coming Soon with information on Morbius, as well as Moon Knight on Disney Plus, Judd Apatow's The Bubble on Netflix, and much, much more that's coming out on theaters and on streaming. So stay
Oh,
tuned for that.
I forgot about the bubble. That's on April
Yes,
1st, isn't it?
that's right. And that's no fooling.
Oh, yes. I'm looking forward to that. Boy, that's going to be a oh my God. And I'm looking forward to Moon Knight. Okay,
Yep,
so
yep.
moving on. We will check you out here tomorrow when we do our top 10. You'll have to come check us out and see what we've got going on for for tomorrow. Otherwise, we will check you out here next week. Bye.
Bye.